Longtime fans of the channel know that I'm a Titanic kid. This is why you should always have two kids, because if you're an only child like me, your only child is gonna pick some niche things to hyperfixate on, like the most iconic, but only third deadliest maritime disaster of all time. But generally, I can go about my life knowing that the worst thing that's ever happened to me personally on a cruise was that my boyfriend at the time, now ex, really wanted to break up with me that entire trip, but unfortunately, our deposit was non-refundable. I honestly almost would have preferred the iceberg. It was that bad. Still, in the summer of 2023, the Titanic took on new life and new relevancy as the Titan Submersible went missing, and it became a huge news story with the world collectively holding their breath, while the people on board the submarine presumably were also holding their breath to conserve oxygen. In all likelihood though, OceanGate's Titan Submersible probably met its end relatively quickly, imploding in on itself, ensuring that all 5 of the occupants, including CEO of the company Stockton Rush, would meet their end. Oh, sorry. I guess that's kind of a spoiler alert for this documentary, in a sense. You know, in a way, this is kind of like they both die at the end. We know the ultimate conclusion of our story, but how we get there is a fascinating and honestly kind of funny question. Netflix's latest documentary, Titan, the OceanGate Disaster, sheds some light on how exactly this tragedy came to pass, and pretty much blames most of the responsibility on one guy, said CEO Stockton Rush. And given the footage they have of him that they include in this documentary, it's pretty easy to see why.
Hear an alarm, just don't worry about it. Best thing you can do is don't do anything. Crack.
Mind you, this is coming from a man piloting a submarine 4,000 meters beneath the sea. I think a benchmark for success shouldn't be, oh, as long as it doesn't completely collapse, that's fine. No, I think we should set our sights higher. It really shouldn't sound like a frat guy trying to crush a beer can with his bare hands. That's probably not a good sign. If I was somehow rich and deluded enough to have signed up for this Titan Submersible experience, sorry, rich and deluded, I've repeated myself, but if I somehow wound up down there and our submarine sounded like that, I am yanking that PlayStation controller this idiot is using to command the craft, and we are going right back up to the surface ASAP. Oh no, wait, this guy named Stockton, who looks like he should be managing a hedge fund and not having invented the submarine, which is the only thing preventing me from becoming Patrick Soup. Oh, he says everything's fine. Let's keep going then. Let's see the bow. Oh my god, I remember that from the movie. So today, I'm doing this video for me as an avid Titanic fan, or excuse me, Titaniac.
Titanic enthusiasts, which we refer to as Titaniacs.
But I think you'll enjoy it too, because we're going to be discussing Titan, an OceanGate disaster, and we're going to be reviewing the documentary as well as breaking down just how insane some of the things contained therein actually are. We're also going to be having a lot of laughs at Stockton Rush's expense, and if you think that's in poor taste, well, the documentary does it on no less than 10 separate occasions.
I have no desire to die, and I'm not going to die.
Then again, this man did make it super easy for a documentary and consequently a YouTube video to pack watch all over his corpse. I think he's been recorded more so than any other person in human history on the record as saying multiple times, "This very dangerous thing won't kill me," before, well, that very same dangerous thing killed him in one of the most widely publicized news stories of the 2020s. My name is Patrick, but my friends call me Pat. If you enjoy my videos, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I love and appreciate you all. Heart back by popular demand. And right off the bat, I should clarify that most of the documentary focuses on the company responsible for manufacturing Titan, OceanGate, rather than specifically the Titan disaster itself. If anything, the actual implosion of Titan itself is really not discussed that much. It's like how if you go visit the JFK Presidential Library, which I would fully recommend by the way, most of the library focuses on JFK's life, his legacy, going to the moon, rather than, you know, his terrible vacation in Texas. Damn, I'm making light of the JFK assassination and the victims of the Titanic. If there are any 115-year-olds watching my video right now, I am sorry, but also, you're very impressive. This editorial decision makes a lot of sense as you come to realize just how dysfunctional the company was, courtesy almost entirely due to the CEO, Stockton Rush. What doesn't make quite as much sense, in my opinion, is just how often this documentary bounces between years and periods of time. It reminds me of Pulp Fiction if Pulp Fiction had been hit on the head with a giant anvil and then was tasked with solving a calculus problem set. We go from the present day to 2020 2023 to a few days later in 2023 to 2016 to 2013 to 2005, back to 2024 to 2021, before circling back again to 2016, and that about covers the first hour of the documentary. Is it super difficult to follow? Well, it will be if you're doom scrolling on your phone the entire time you're watching it, so put that puppy on Do Not Disturb and chuck it away for 2 hours if you even have the self-control to do so. I have the self-control, and I always put my phone on Do Not Disturb when I'm watching movies at home, and yes, that does give me the moral high ground. Unfortunately, I do then lose all of it by being a YouTuber. Shit. Is this pinball-like narrative structure really the most effective way to tell this story? In my opinion, no, but it honestly gets the job done. Look, my basic perspective is that every time this documentary would start to annoy me, they would just pipe in a clip of Stockton Rush saying something stupid and or darkly comedic / ironic, and then they would win me right back.
Hear an alarm, just don't worry about it. Best thing you can do is don't do anything.
It's good to see that this so-called genius CEO, words used at different points during the documentary, it's good to see he has the same philosophy of somebody who's broke and has their check engine light come on. Just ignore it. What's the worst that could possibly happen? Oh, that's pretty bad. And one thing that was under-discussed when it came to the Titan Submersible is just how deep it actually had to go. So if you had friends growing up, or if you played sports, let me just show you this video that demonstrates just how far the Titan Submersible actually needed to go to reach the wreck site of the Titanic. And it actually had to go slightly below that. I may have gotten a 2 on my AP Physics exam, and a 2 on my AP Physics 2 exam, but I do know that there's this thing called pressure. And it starts to become a bit of an issue when you're 1 Empire State Building underwater, let alone 8.5. There's a reason why there's no human life 4,000 meters below the water, unless you happen to be a #AtlantisIsRealTruther, or you happen to be delusional enough to think the world depicted in BioShock was actually a documentary.
He talks about some floating city that could also submerge.
Oh, okay, so the person he was talking about there was Stockton Rush. It's good to know he really was that delusional to think he could create rapture. Just out of curiosity, did Mr. Rush have any other far-flung fantastical ideas?
They had wild ideas like they want to take Pearl Jam in the submarine.
I bet Pearl Jam's agent felt so smug during that summer in 2023 when that sub went missing, and they realized that they had correctly let Stockton Rush's email go right to spam. But let me stop bouncing around like the documentary does, and let's approach this thing linearly as we break down and review it. So we begin with footage of the Titan Submersible set to very ominous music. It reminds me a lot of the scenes from the water planet in the movie Interstellar, and to be honest with you, Stockton Rush is very similar to Matthew McConaughey's character in that movie, if Stockton Rush was able to stick the landing, for lack of better words. Let me show you 2 clips, and I want you to honestly tell me that they don't have a very similar vibe.
By the time we're done testing it, I believe it's pretty much invulnerable.
It's not possible.
No, it's necessary.
Something else you'll notice almost immediately about the documentary is that nearly everyone they interview gets a cool Special Forces-esque nickname. Am I gonna make fun of this? Yes. Should more documentaries give cool nicknames like the Investigator, the Insider, and the Whistleblower? Also, yes. Unfortunately, Bonnie, the company's accountant, doesn't really get a cool title card at all, presumably for copyright reasons. Okay, wait. So we could call her the accountant too. Ah, shit, we can't do that one either. We see a lot of news footage in this first part of the documentary, but something that really stood out to me were the texts from Emily's ex-OceanGate employee group chat. The sentiment of immediate pessimism does, unfortunately, as you'll come to see, make a lot of sense, but to see it spelled out this bluntly is definitely gives you cause for pause. And these blunt texts become especially sad when you realize they're contrasted with one of the daughters of the victims, who said that all the families initially had hoped that there was going to be a rescue. That's quite depressing, but Netflix doesn't let us stew in that depression for too long, because immediately after this we get an excerpt from this presumably real, insane right-winger who has a really interesting theory about the Titan Submersible.
What if all of this is actually a ploy to keep people from visiting the Titanic wreckage?
Don't you guys just wish you could live in the mind of a conspiratorial conservative just for one day? I mean, it seems so whimsical. I could leave my apartment and think, wow, that's not a bodega. That's where Andrew Cuomo secretly vampirically drains the blood of undocumented immigrants. And oh, the train is delayed? Well, that's because there are mole people in the subway tunnels. And oh, the sky is orange today? Mother Nature must have Trump derangement syndrome. Typical. And here we meet Jason, the investigator, who's tasked with finding out what actually happened to the Titan submersible, and he's doing this by holding a hearing.
I have agreed to appear before this committee today because I'm guilty.
This plot doesn't really go anywhere because this investigative body still has not yet released their report, and I hate to break it to you, Jason, but I've watched a 2-hour documentary, so I consider myself to be an expert. And as I've mentioned before, we flash back to 2016, where Stockton Rush is flexing the precursor of Titan, Cyclops.
And all of these are emergency, the ones that are in red, so that's 4 days of emergency oxygen.
And here we have one of many times that the documentary does essentially the artistic equivalent of dancing on this poor idiot's grave. And don't get me wrong, I don't say that as a criticism. This egomaniac is basically single-handedly responsible for the deaths of 4 innocent people. I'm totally on board with making fun of him by including the clip where he proudly displays his backup oxygen stores like a toddler proudly showcases their macaroni artwork. He didn't even get to use the backup oxygen on the Titan, despite what the media theorized, because it probably imploded in on itself like a dying star well before they even reached the site of the wreck. Then the documentary further flexes on Stockton by bringing in this guy Bob, the expert, who apparently safely brought 150 people to the Titanic wreck site with no deaths. Ah, poor Stockton. Here's footage of your life goal. Here's footage of you looking like an idiot. Here's this other guy who did your life goal better than you, and for the rest of the documentary, every 5 minutes, he's gonna chime in and call you a complete moron. We then get to this quote, which frankly seems even more unbelievable.
I read an article that said there are 3 words in the English language that are known throughout the planet, and that's Coca-Cola, God, and Titanic.
Seriously? I mean, those are our 3 most important things? Like, God I can understand. He's a pretty important guy. Coca-Cola? We don't carry it, sorry. Is Pepsi okay? But Titanic? It just seems odd to me that that took the place of something like, say, the Alamo. You know, the thing we were all told very explicitly to remember. And you forgot, haven't you? You have, haven't you? You should be ashamed. I bet you don't even remember the Maine. Okay, that's actually the one people forget. I shouldn't be so harsh. Before we move into the nitty-gritty of Titan's construction, I want to point out another thing the documentary does a lot to bully Stockton.
I watched Star Trek, Star Wars, and I wanted to see those alien life forms.
They love putting past audio of him talking alongside some of the most unflattering photos that have ever been taken of another human being ever. And they'll even zoom in on most of the photos too, as if things couldn't get any worse for the guy. Frankly, it's very YouTube video-esque, as evidenced by what I just did. Or you could even say it's very Ken Burns-esque if Ken Burns hated Ulysses S. Grant and wanted to make him look like a bit of an asshole. Personally, if it were me, I would have zoomed in on Stockton's cute little video game controller he used to actually pilot the submarine, just to underscore how absurd the situation is, and to frankly have yet another laugh at his expense.
Spared no expense.
Titan was created in part with help from the University of Washington, and then when the thing imploded, it was categorically not a U-dub. Okay, come on. The documentary's basically doing the same thing, they just have the decency not to make bad puns.
But this is the first time a design like this, with a carbon fiber hull, was going to be used.
It is also probably the last time. But yeah, Titan was made with a carbon fiber hull, which is lighter and cheaper than titanium, but has the slight defect of occasionally completely failing. There's also just this weird 30-second clip where there's a bunch of footage of Chinese submarines which are certified to go way deeper down into the ocean than Titan was, but the documentary doesn't really elaborate on that, so I'm kind of just a little bit confused. Knowing that these submarines exist might have been a bit of an awkward revelation for Stockton once he reached the pearly gates, though.
No, it's fine. I just didn't think it would be Chinese, is all.
TikTok bit aside, I don't think he's making it to heaven unless they have an exception for idiots who've created hostile work environments. And if they do, there might just be hope yet for my old boss at this hotel I used to work at. He tried to convince my coworker to capture a rabid bat because he was too cheap to call animal control. Wait, do you even get charged for animal control? Like, if there's a bat, like, are they gonna charge you? I feel like it's in the common interest of the government for me to not get rabies. But what do I know? Perhaps it was just my boss's hubris manifest. And speaking of, let's just play what is probably the funniest clip in the entire documentary.
By the time we're done testing it, I believe it's pretty much invulnerable.
And that's pretty much what they said about the Titanic.
That's right.
Oh my actual god, who's well known around the world just like Coca-Cola and the Titanic, how the fuck can you think saying this is a good idea? Do you not believe in karma? Do you not believe in Murphy's Law? Do you not believe in omens of mermaids lulling wayward mariners like yourself to a watery grave? People say that when archaeologist Howard Carter opened up the tomb of King Tutankhamun, he unleashed a curse. Well, this would be like if he just went to King Tut's mummy, pulled down his pants, and given a golden shower to the golden headdress. Pissing on the pharaohs, so to speak, yet expecting not to be smited by a vengeful god Anubis. I guess this isn't super surprising, given we then learn that Stockton Rush came from generational wealth, including being related to 2 signers of the Declaration of Independence. And, you know, murder of 4 innocent people notwithstanding, I do think it's kind of fun how he did cool rich people things, like trying to make a business going to the site of the Titanic, rather than boring rich people things, like investment banking. Now, I know I just did notwithstand a couple murders, but frankly, so did OceanGate. Take a look at how one of their customers describes the waiver you needed to sign to actually board the Titan submersible.
In all of the documentation, it was very straightforward that you're, basically signing your life away.
Mind you, this is a satisfied customer saying this. It's like if every person who ate at Taco Bell said, yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, the Baja Blast has a 15% chance of killing you dead right away, but, I mean, that Doritos Loco Taco can't really beat it, can you? Actually, this might be a bad example because there was a time in the aftermath of my breakup where I was eating the Taco Bell $8 combo meal every week. Listen. Don't judge me. A drink, chips, a beefy burrito, and a Crunchwrap Supreme made me forget about the pain in my heart because I was clogging all my arteries with a bunch of lard. One thing that really stood out to me while I was watching the documentary, I don't really know how to put this delicately, but the whole experience of seeing the wreck of the Titanic does not in any way, shape, or form seem worth it to me. I know, that's sacrilege coming from a former Titanic kid, or excuse me, a Titaniac.
Titaniacs.
But you end up spending $250,000 to see the bow of the Titanic from a pretty small window. One passenger in 2021 cared so little that they got footage of that bow with their iPhone filming vertically. Holy fuck. I spent like $150 to go see the foliage in Vermont last year, and even I made sure that all of the footage I was getting was filmed horizontally. Moreover, the Titanic is probably one of the single most photographed things in human existence. I would rather spend $20 on the Titanic VR experience than I would to risk myself getting crushed to death in a tin can with this crazy man who looks like Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy. There's not really a joke here, but do you see the resemblance? Although the similarities go beyond their looks because neither of these two men have a spine. One because they're a Republican senator who voted to confirm vaccine nutjob RFK Jr. despite the fact that he is a licensed physician and should have known better, and the other one doesn't have a spine because it got crushed to goo in the middle of the ocean in 2023. We're then taken again into the fraught construction of the Titan submersible, where we learn that OceanGate is partnering with Boeing. Boeing, perhaps most famous for a bunch of their planes crashing or failing in the last few years, and we learn that Boeing had safety concerns about the sub. Yes, again, Boeing, the company Boeing, was concerned about safety. Hey, editing Pat here. Guess what happened as I was editing this video? Oh, what plane crashed? What plane crashed, huh? What company made that one? That's like if Remy the rat from the movie Ratatouille came into your kitchen and said that your workspace was potentially unclean. He's a rat! He's a rat in the kitchen! Everybody that Linguini was probably serving was developing the bubonic plague. A lot of the issues with OceanGate and with Titan itself really start to unravel when it comes to a disagreement between the CEO and David Lockbridge, entitled The Whistleblower. So that should give you a clue as to which direction the relationship between these two men is going to take. No one's ever had a healthy relationship with their boss and decided to become a whistleblower. It's why I'm no longer staying silent about my experience in that hotel. I am opening up about #Batgate. I will no longer be blind, like a bat, to the workplace abuses in this small boutique hotel in downtown Boston.
It's a piece of debris. For sure.
Essentially what happened is that OceanGate was taking customers to a much shallower and much more accessible wreck site, and Stockton Rush told David the pilot, hey, I'm going to be doing the piloting for this mission, and David was like, that annoys me, and then Stockton nearly got them all stuck and killed, and then David saved the day. What is his reward for this heroic feat?
I was dropped from all email communications, verbal communications. I was totally out of the loop.
Oh yes! Being completely blackballed from the company chain of command, despite the fact that he's the director of ocean operations and the future pilot of this submarine that they're building. Oh well, I mean, at least nothing bad was happening with its design, right?
I was seeing every single piece, and pretty much every single piece had an issue.
Okay, that's not great, but at least it wasn't being designed by 24-year-olds, right?
24-year-old Nicholas Nelson is too.
Just knowing that we're sending something down to, 4,000 meters, and it's our design that's being brought there is just amazing.
Look, speaking from experience, the only thing 24-year-olds are really qualified to do are to be hotel concierges, replacement level Target employees, or, I don't know, maybe like YouTubers. That's why I'm always so amused when I meet 24-year-olds who are like working in finance. Like, you shouldn't be an investment banker, you should be, I don't know, frolicking in the hills. But anyway, all this talk of investment banking really makes me wonder if I should go back to college. Maybe I've made the wrong career choice. Like, I need to go back to business school so I can use AI to answer such difficult business questions like, which type of graph is best to show distribution of data? It's a histogram, holy balls. I've been an out of math class degen for years, and even I know that. By the way, I love how all these videos are just fake and they're purely just ads made by AI companies. Like, which professor writes no AI right on the board to start a test? Fearing for his safety and for Stockton's safety and frankly the safety for anybody who's going to be on the submersible, David gave the thing a safety inspection, which it failed. He told Stockton about this, and the very next day he was brought into the office and fired in a conversation that Stockton oddly recorded for no real reason.
And I'm sure the industry thinks I'm a fucking idiot. That's fine, they've been doing that for 8 years.
It's like he somehow knew that his submersible was going to explode, and obviously they're going to make a documentary about it, and obviously Netflix is going to need some fodder for late in Act 2.
It's not going to just go to 3,100 and be perfect, and at 3,200 it all goes away. That ain't going to happen, and I will put my life on the line to say that ain't going to happen.
Well, see, that's all well and good, but you're bringing in people who are going to be in that submarine, who are paying customers. So you're gambling with their lives too. And now, Stockton, in the afterlife, you get to see Netflix make a documentary about you where they're just awkwardly zooming into pictures of your face, while in the background, everybody is calling you a complete maniacal psychopath.
I had to make sure that nobody spoke up. I worked for somebody that is probably borderline clinical psychopath.
Stockton's bold new plan, in the aftermath of the abrupt departure of David, who was set to be his pilot, is to turn to his director of finance.
Bonnie is going to be our next lead pilot, and this is going to be great. We're going to have a female lead pilot. This is going to play well to the media. Are you nuts? I'm an accountant.
Let this serve as a word of caution to any accountants out there. Yes, I know just a few minutes ago I did insult your entire industry, but what I'm about to say is truly earnest advice. If you find yourself working on a submarine or a spaceship or a helicopter, and your boss fires the previous pilot who was very qualified because they say it's too dangerous, and your boss then offers you a promotion to their former role, well, you should just take Bonnie's advice.
I went home and updated my LinkedIn profile.
It's okay though, because this is not a joke. Eventually, David would turn to a former intern to fill the position. It's around here we finally see the first completed version of the Titan, and it does not sound encouraging. Who thought this was safe? Who thought this was wise? Apparently Stockton did, and the documentary then tells us that he was a total f***ing idiot.
Allegedly, he's a degreed aerospace engineer, but there are scientific principles that he wholly didn't understand.
Bro, this man just said allegedly he got this degree. Allegedly. Stockton is like the most well-documented person in this entire documentary, and his chief engineer didn't even know with certainty whether or not he actually got an aerospace degree. But Tony, the engineer here, has a right to be a little bitter because Titan eventually developed a crack, and despite the fact Tony claims, yeah, I told Stockton about this before, ultimately, he ends up getting fired. And who could have predicted this? Oh, right. Absolutely anyone could have predicted that this does not seem like a structurally sound submarine, including the director of engineering that you just fired. This left Stockton with no choice but to completely rebuild the hull. He entrusted it to a company who had never built a submarine hull before, but then the pandemic happened, so there was a severe revenue crunch in the company. Eventually, though, Stockton is kind of able to get the company solvent enough after a bunch of layoffs, and they bring in 2022, CBS correspondent David Pogue.
He's not going to put a live correspondent on anything that's dangerous.
This documentary reminds me a lot of Air Bud, actually, because it's basically just a series of people saying, heh, a dog can't play basketball, and then at the end, we know, unfortunately, a dog does play basketball. Although this does raise an interesting question, I do wonder if Air Bud would have appreciated the wreck site of the Titanic. And again, the footage of this, not that it's not impressive, but like, this is what people were risking their lives and spending their entire lives trying to see. Like, it just does not look that impressive. And if you disagree with me, and this advice is coming a little bit too late for Stockton Rush, but I'll say it anyway, go see the Roman Colosseum. It's nearly 2,000 years old, and guess what? They removed the lions from the Colosseum, so you don't have to actually die in the process of going to go visit it. And here, things really started to take their final turn for the worse. Stockton fired any dissenting voices from the company, specifically as it related to safety. He was suing David to prevent publicizing the Titan's many failures, and he was increasingly delusional about the capacity of his own invention.
Almost every deep diving sub makes a noise at some point.
Well, Stockton, we do know the final noise that your submarine ended up making. Stockton made the decision to dry dock Titan in Canada in sub-zero weather, despite specifically being warned not to do that.
If water gets in there, and you sit it out in freezing conditions and that water expands, it breaks fibers.
Christ, I'm gay, and even I understand that water expands when it freezes. You're supposed to be an eccentric genius millionaire, and if you're going to be an eccentric genius millionaire, please familiarize yourself with the states of matter, specifically as they relate to water, although I do admit you might have been out sick that day when they talked about it in the first grade. We then get to Titan's final dive, as told to us by this very ominous black screen. We also meet our final character, the influencer. Hey, that's me. Jack the Diver, a YouTube personality, was slated to be on the first seasonal voyage of the Titan Submersible, which ultimately had to be canceled due to the weather. And just like the person who Leonardo DiCaprio beat in poker to take the tickets to board the Titanic, in retrospect, I'm sure Jack was very grateful. Well, not the real life Jack. Actual Jack, you know, died, door, it was a whole thing.
And I'm just thinking like, damn, you know, like, what if that was me?
And I should note here that the insert shots of the reporter and the other dude who actually went on the Titan were almost certainly taken out of context. They likely did not have a tearful moment of introspection caused by, I don't know, survivor's guilt or something. But listen, the documentary needed to pull the shot, and when you gotta pull the shot, you gotta pull the shot. But that takes us to the end, where we get a couple brief musings on what we just watched, but I feel like we might be left with some unanswered questions.
It's culture that caused this to happen. It's culture that killed the people.
He wanted fame. First and foremost, to fuel his ego, fame. and he's got it.
Or perhaps we don't have unanswered questions, but we have questions with unsatisfactory answers. Is the story of the Titan submersible really so simple that it can be distilled into one egomaniac recklessly pursuing a goal at the expense of safety and the well-being of others? I'm realizing now that I am describing the plot of Jurassic Park, but it just seems a little weird that this actual real-life tragedy has answers that are that simple. Ultimately, though, as tough as it is for me to wrap my mind around that being our ultimate conclusion, it does make a lot of sense. A boss at any company shapes the culture, for better or for worse, whether you're at a Chipotle manufacturing burritos or at OceanGate manufacturing experimental submersibles. Except in the former case, the consequence for failure is an angry post on r/Chipotle, and in the latter, the consequences are killing yourself and 4 other innocent people. And in the spirit of an egotistical maniac with big goals, but in all likelihood, a very small penis, I'm going to show you the last dunk that the documentary gets in on him. In the final moments, I'll show it to you one more time. By the way, Stockton Rush, very fucking stupid name.
I have no desire to die, and I'm not going to die.
And I would say my overall review of the doc is that it is slightly elevated from the typical Netflix true crime sloppumentary. It's a good watch, if a little bit convoluted. But that's going to do it for me, guys. My name is Patrick, but my friends call me Pat. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you've enjoyed it, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It really does help me out, truly, genuinely. Free way to help out the channel. And leave a comment down below. Are you a fellow Titanic kid? Am I the only one who did that? What do we think? Did this bring back some memories? I'm sure it's going to bring back some negative comments. People are like, you're being insensitive. You know, so was the documentary. But as always, my name is Patrick, but my friends call me Pat, and I'll see you for the next one. Oh, I might have said that twice. My bad.